Good evening. Welcome to the Royal, to what we think is a very special Conversations at the Royal. I am Jackie DeRoche. I am the coordinator of what's called Client and Family Relations at the Royal. The artwork that you were watching, for those of you who were here a bit earlier, is artwork that won't necessarily be represented here on this panel, because it's from our clients, some from the forensic program here, but also from our forensic program in Brockville. So we wanted to try and bring them in as best we could into the conversations tonight. And so some of them loaned their work to us for us to do that, so you could at least have a look at it. So I have a lot of fun in my job. I do a lot of things that aren't maybe always fun, but I have a really fun part in that I get to work with clients and families at the Royal. Tonight is really about our Client Advisory Council. And you're going to find out why I think it's really a special part of my job that I get to do. But I wanted to let you know a little bit about what's called the Client Advisory Council at the Royal. We've had a council here since 2006. We also have a family council, but tonight's about the Client Council. They've been around since 2006. And I've been told that there's been upward of 80 or 90 patients that have filtered through that council over the years to bring their perspective on services at the Royal. So members of the council of the Client Council are people living with a mental illness or an addiction, and they've received care at some point and may still be receiving care at the Royal. Their role really is to help us ensure that the voice of clients is heard, really considered, and really respected throughout the Royal in everything that we do. So some of those people might sit at what we call a corporate level, where they'd sit on committees with us, always bringing that perspective from the clients into anything we're discussing or acting on. They might review policy at that level, those kinds of things. But they also can delve right down into direct services, so programming, that sort of thing. So every time someone's doing anything new in the hospital, they should be involving a client, and we're getting better and better at doing that all the time. And among some of the very special things that they do something very unique that nobody else can do here for us at the Royal, and that's bring their lived experience of living with mental illness to everything that we do. So that's the part that we're really happy about tonight. But I also want to acknowledge some of our staff that are here tonight. I'll introduce them a little more in depth in a second. But they come with, first of all, they're volunteering to be here tonight after, I'm sure, a long day of work. They spend their time, they share their knowledge, they share their expertise and skills to help us put art. They're going to help us tonight put art in the context of wellness. I also want to acknowledge that they do this in their work. So they might come with a very specific skill around art therapy, and sometimes it's just they use modalities of art in the work that they do. So they use art as a medium to try and help clients and support them in their recovery process. So evening starts with the two staff members. And then we'll move over to talk to the clients, let them have a little say about the meaning of their artwork to them. And I would ask that we just keep the questions till the end. We've done a really good job, I think, at timing to allow us to have that at the end. So I'd ask if you could do that for me, that would be great. So starting with Sara Richardson-Brown just give me a sec here. She's a registered recreation therapist with Therapeutic Recreation Ontario. She has 17 years of experience working in this field. She has an honors bachelor degree in applied science and gerontology. She has a postgraduate diploma in therapeutic recreation. So with all of that, you can imagine she's quite passionate about the field of therapeutic recreation and its role in bringing meaning and purpose to her clients. She's worked in a variety of settings, including community outreach, community day programs, hospital settings, and in long-term care. She's dedicated her career primarily to working with people with mental illness, including the geriatric population and in all those settings we talked about. She's also worked with people recovering from brain injuries. She's presently working the forensic program here on this campus, and she's been here for 4 years. And throughout her career, Sara has prioritized community integration opportunities for her clients, and she does that to promote her clients' right to participate fully in society, to connect with others, and to optimize their independence. So that's Sara. I'll introduce Courtney Radbourne as well. Courtney is a registered psychotherapist with the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario. She's an accredited music therapist with the Canadian Association of Music Therapy. During her tenure as a music therapist, Courtney has developed her own private practice, and that's called The Healing Song. Nice little website too. I've been on the website. She's been practicing music therapy in the Ottawa area for over 10 years. She's worked in a wide variety of populations in her career with a focus on mental health. Courtney's worked with the Royal at our Royal Ottawa Place, which is a long-term care facility, since 2011. She developed a program there to provide music therapy services to its residents in both individual and in a group setting. Courtney, again, with all this experience and everything, very passionate that music can provide a voice and means of expression for everyone. So I'll hand it over to these two staff members, passionate people. And I'll come back in a bit.
Okay, so hi everyone. Thanks so much for having us. Thank you to the Client Advisory Council for inviting us to participate. Yes, we are. You probably have two of the most passionate music therapists in front of you tonight. So we're excited to be here, and I think Jackie put it really nicely that we're just here to provide a bit of a context of the arts in wellness. So we have an outline here for you to review. We're just going to talk about what do we mean by creative arts, clarify a little bit between therapy and a therapeutic experience. Lots of terms are thrown around in our society and used as marketing tools, so we'll talk a little bit about those differences. Courtney does a lovely review of, I love listening to her talk about the review of the arts across human societies, so we'll listen to that. I will attempt to summarize research findings in the creative arts that helps us, sort of confirms for us, we know that art is good for us, but it's really cool when you come across research that validates that. So we'll share that. And we got some tips for you for using the creative arts in the community and at home. We're going to do this little shuffle. Dance, yeah. So when we're talking about the creative arts, we just wanted to kind of clarify that there's 4 main categories that we'll be addressing when we say the term creative arts tonight. And so that would be music, the visual arts, creative movement or expressive movement, which would include dance and or drama, and then expressive writing. So that's kind of collectively what we mean when we're talking about the creative arts this evening. So we also wanted to talk about the difference between a therapy environment using an art modality, so whether it's with a music therapist, an art therapist, a drama therapist, so what that kind of looks like, or even a rec therapist, versus just the therapeutic experience if someone was independently accessing the arts. So the big fundamental difference is that there is an accredited professional that is in that environment with a client or clients. And through that experience, they develop a therapeutic relationship, and the therapist goes through a list of assessments and then creates treatment plans and goals around that. And for me as a music therapist, I use the music and my therapeutic relationship with clients to reach those larger goals as a whole. And I'm always adjusting my responses to what people are offering me back. But it's definitely an active kind of dual relationship that where the client is doing work, even at the most passive level.
So that's an example of kind of what therapy looks like.
And I would add, from a recreation therapy perspective, our overall goal in rec therapy is to try and assist our clients to get to that self-directed stage of a therapeutic experience. But sometimes when people are in hospital, they're not quite ready to engage or pursue activity on their own. They may not know even where to start. So the role of the recreation therapist would be to help them find activity that's meaningful to them, help them discover what activities are beneficial for them depending on what they're struggling with. They might be able to select specific activities to help them feel better. And then we want to help move them along towards independent participation. And so what that looks like is it's self-directed, you're accessing it on your own, you find it to be beneficial, it's enjoyable, it's meaningful. So any pursuit where you're attending an art class or going out and getting your supplies and doing art at home, joining a dance class, getting together with people and making music, all these kinds of activities are therapeutic for the individual doing the activity. But it's funny because we've noticed recently, especially with the whole coloring thing, there's coloring therapy books and mandala therapy books, and like it's interesting how people use that term in marketing, but it's therapeutic. It's a therapeutic experience, and absolutely you will. I feel very strongly to say that you will feel better if you take time and initiate. The hardest part is initiating. If you initiate and follow through on engaging in creative art, you will feel better when you're done.
So I'm going to bring you through the creative arts and its connection to man, to human, throughout history. So we're going to start with the first known kind of example of what would be visual arts. So we have a cave painting here, and it dates back all the way it's about 40,000 years old. So that's a long time. And so in pre-literate cultures, and what I mean by that, in cultures where we didn't have written word, we had painting. And though there is some speculation as to what all the interpretations of the paintings are, it was believed that it was one of the first methods that that man used to create symbols and to communicate with one another. And as we kind of continue on and we look at music in pre-literate cultures, music was it's innate in us, from our heartbeats to in pre-literate cultures as well, call and response with drumming and those types of things. But it goes a bit further in these societies where they would have one member of their culture that was known as the medicine man or the shaman, and he would use music specifically, most cases drumming and chants, as a means of healing those that were ill in their communities. So it goes really right back to the very beginning. We see the visual arts and the music coming together. And as we move forward, we have findings in ancient Egypt where they use both music, dance, in their ritual healings. So again, way back when, things like music was seen as a gift from the gods, and it was very powerful. And they often used music as a means to soothe the soul, and it was seen as a medicine from the soul, and they too used chanting and singing. And you can see in the picture that's provided that there are a collection of different primitive instruments that they did use, and there are artifacts in museums to show those very primitive instruments, but very important in their society. And then we have the Greeks, who not only prescribed music as a means of emotional release, but they started to get that connection of the dramatic arts. And so they would build these big theaters, such as the example here, which just show the time and energy and care that they took and the value that they had for the dramatic arts. And they would have this great festival every year where they reenacted their mythological stories. And it was seen as a great emotional release. And Aristotle at the time believed that it wasn't just for those that were acting in these plays, but for the society as a whole. It was a way to purge negative emotions and to find well-being within that process. So we're starting to see a little bit more of that connection, that the bigger whole is getting the importance. And as we head on into the Renaissance, and the word Renaissance actually means rebirth, they actually they prescribed music very often to not only alleviate people that were suffering from mental illness or melancholy, but they also prescribed it as a premeditative measure as well. And then we also see this giant shift in the Renaissance where you have an explosion of art and science, and importance was put on education. So we're starting to see that move and that shift that's starting to support the scientific values of the creative arts. And if you think of like Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci, art and sculpting and everything was just such a form of expression.
It's prolific.
Yeah. So as we're moving along further, we're going to talk about the development of the creative art therapies. So we're moving forward quite a bit because I could be here all evening. So I'm going to talk specifically about music therapy, art therapy, and drama therapy, or not psychotherapy, but psychodramatic therapy, as they preterm. So music therapy really started to get its development in World War I and II, and this is when we saw veterans who were coming off the battlefield, and a lot of them were suffering from tremendous emotional and physical pain, and traditional medical interventions were not reaching them. So they often said that music, as it was being utilized at the bedside or for morale, was almost like a miracle cure. And this is what kind of started the ball rolling, where they could, in mass quantity, start to see that it really has potential to reach people on a deeper level. And then we have this dapper gentleman. His name is Adrian Hill, and he coined the term art therapy. And shortly after World War II, he ended up getting diagnosed with tuberculosis. And as such, he was sent to a sanitarium where he was being treated, and he really connected with his artistic side and started working with the visual arts as a means of expression during this difficult period in his life. And as he got better, he was able to bring that experience with the other patients that he was with in the sanitarium. And he started the term art therapy, and he saw the value of a portal to have self-expression without people judging. So that was very important. And so that was just right after World War II. So we're getting into the 1940s going on here with Jacob Marino, and he developed what we know as psychodramas. And what I mean by that is he would have his clients come in and reenact real life past events with clients, and then they would analyze it after. And it was an interesting way for his clients to get in touch with the inner emotions that went with maybe some of those events. So we really start to see a big shift in the 1940s and 50s, where the research is starting to come, and the validity is starting to come. And with that, Sara's going to share some of the wonderful research and why exactly art on all levels connects with us beyond what we've seen in history and what we know.
Thank you. So I chose to put the outcomes in sort of like one snapshot because I think it really highlights how much of a difference engagement in creative art can make in our wellness. Courtney and I spent a lot of time doing a literature review, and as she mentioned, as the arts became sort of more formalized in terms of a professional helping profession, research started to happen. And so there's quite a body of research now that's come out, and most of it is produced by therapists or occupational therapists, art therapy, music therapists working in the field. A lot of it's out of the UK, and I guess the States a little bit too. But what's interesting is, although the therapists have done this research, a lot of the modalities that they were using were self-directed engagement in creative arts. So there's enough research there to summarize that there are general outcomes in engagement in the creative arts. And in fact, in the UK, they are looking at using the arts for a public health intervention, which is kind of cool. Yeah. So there's 4 main areas that we see. We try to categorize them just to provide a snapshot and help you remember. Generally, across the modalities, so the visual arts, creative writing, there's research on poetry, research on creative writing, dance, drama, music. No matter the modality, we see an increase in positive emotion and improved mood, and decrease in negative emotion. We see decreased feelings of anxiety. We see decreased stress. This is all very exciting for these people that work in this field, and like we know this, but then to be able to be like, yes, this exists, this research is there, is very exciting. So that's just one aspect. So we know it improves mood is sort of how we generalize that category. There's tons of changes that go on in the body and in the brain. Lots of studies have shown after engagement in a creative art activity that individuals will have a decreased heart rate and decreased respiration rate, which is signs of the relaxation response, right? So it helps us to relax. You know, and I always tell my clients, you know, think of when we're in a busy restaurant and if the kids are getting all wound up, we give them a coloring book. Well, that's because it helps to calm people down, right? You color, it directs your attention, it has a soothing effect. We also see through engagement in the creative arts a decrease in cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And we see an increase, or it promotes the release of dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter, which is sort of like our natural antidepressant. So it makes we feel good. So we see that. We also see there's studies that talk about decreased perception of pain. So people who live with chronic pain and engage in the creative arts, they find it helps them to decrease. They don't notice their pain as much. There's studies that talk about improved recovery after surgery, recovery from illness. And the other thing that I think is really cool about the creative arts is that it uses both sides of the brain. And so it's an activity that, you know, in my time when I worked in geriatrics, when someone is living with dementia, sometimes they'll have a deficit that's specifically related to a certain part of the brain. And with the creative arts, you're using lots of parts of the brain, and so the deficit can become minimized, and you're able to really see the strengths of a person come out, and the person can blossom in front of you. And it's really powerful, you know, not only the person's having a meaningful experience, but for the caregivers, both staff and family around, to see this person in there, right? And you see it through that engagement in the arts. So that it's the fact that both parts of the brain are being used that allows that to happen, which is really, really fascinating. So the category for self, and this one I've really seen in my work. I'm a rec therapist in forensics. So our clients not only live with struggling with the stigma of mental illness, but they experience a double stigma of also being in the forensic system. And so it's really hard to figure out, like, you know, who am I? Like, well, who am I apart from this experience that I've had and apart from my illness? And the studies show that engagement in creative arts helps someone to develop an increased sense of self-identity. So identity outside of illness. And it's something that I've seen over and over again in my work with clients. There's 3 different ways. So I just have a little story. Last year, I accompanied a few clients to a community art class. We were taking lessons together. I was co-participating as a student in the class. And of course, I invited my clients who enjoy art. So off we go, and we're at this class. And we did introductions, and we went around the room, and all of my clients introduced themselves as to what kind of an artist they were. Hi, I'm so-and-so, and I enjoy photography. Hi, I'm so-and-so, and I do abstract art. and I sat there and it was so powerful for me to see, in the context of my work, we have this client recreation therapist relationship, and then we're out in the community and they're identifying as artists, and it's super powerful. And then that same sense of self-identity carries over to their relationships with their family members. Suddenly they've got stuff they can talk about. They're doing this really cool thing. They have gifts that they're giving at Christmas time. And also I've seen a shift in the staff-client relationships. So when you have an exhibit like what we had tonight, and staff are coming up, psychiatrists are coming up, and you're exchanging about the art. And, I think it brings us together, and it allows us to connect as human beings instead of having that sort of caregiver, care recipient relationship. So I just find it so powerful in this particular area. In addition to the self-identity, the studies also show an increase in self-esteem and sense of self-worth. That's reported over and over again regardless of the modality that's used in the creative arts. And so the last main area is social. So the arts often bring people together. We often perform arts together. We get together to paint together, to make music together, to dance. So engagement in the creative arts, there's this secondary benefit of increasing social supports and social connections. And we could do a whole other talk on the benefits of social connections for both mental and physical health. We live longer, it strengthens our immune system, it decreases anxiety and depression. So there's all kinds of benefits through social connection. And we see that from the arts and from engaging in the arts, it helps bring people together. And lastly, I don't have it on the slide, but I did want to mention, because some of the people that I work with have schizophrenia, and one of the clusters of symptoms in schizophrenia is what we call negative symptoms. And the negative symptoms, it's a cluster of symptoms, so I couldn't figure out where to put it because it doesn't really fit in any one category. But generally, it is in the research as a best practice to use the creative arts as a modality for addressing negative symptoms in people who live with schizophrenia. And so what we see is, you think about negative symptoms, well, we're increasing social connections, we're increasing connection to emotion. And even with, sometimes as part of the negative symptom, it's just that ability to sort of move and coordinate your body, initiate and just move faster is sometimes impacted. And so your brain's being stimulated. It affects all these quadrants. And so it's interesting because we did the lit review and I knew it was a best practice for schizophrenia for negative symptoms, it all kind of comes together. So it's quite powerful. So now we just wanted to summarize again what the different types of creative arts tend to be. And there's a handout at the front. So visual arts can be anything from painting to coloring, drawing, doing crafts. I saw some crafts and beadwork was out there in the space outside the auditorium. If people have phones and can get on Pinterest, there are, oh my goodness, so many ideas on Pinterest to do that can help you initiate an activity. There's places you can even go paint pottery if you're not ready to do pottery. Yeah. And in terms of painting, the dollar store supplies are fantastic. As rec therapists, like we can work a dollar store, you don't have to go to Desserts. You can, their products are lovely, but you can get everything that you need at the dollar store to explore the creative arts. And the process will still have the same benefits. You don't have to have the premium grade paint to have a better experience, right? So I would encourage you to go peruse the dollar store and see what you find and what inspires you. We'll let the music therapist talk about music.
So again, music is easily accessible, but if you're looking at a more individualized avenue for yourself, maybe thinking about just making your own playlist, but with the intent of what you would like to achieve with it. So for example, are you going to play really upbeat, go-get-em kind of music for days that maybe you need a little bit more energy and motivation, maybe to get through something? Or is it something more soft and or even classical, just whatever you're feeling that would maybe inspire relaxation. So just thinking about the creation of certain lists or certain kind of music that you can relate to, that you might be able to put a label on that says, I know this would get me going in the morning, or this is going to offer me some relaxation if I'm having, increased symptoms of anxiety. Also, music, again, is so accessible today. And so you can actually rent instruments from the Library of Ottawa, which is an amazing program. And they also have resources there that you can connect via online if you need lessons. So that's a very affordable avenue. If it's something you've always wanted to do, but maybe you're just like, well, it's a bit of a commitment, I don't know, I want to try it out. That's really accessible. You can always create music in an app. There's so many different apps like GarageBand that you can access. Local choirs. There's so many local choirs, and not all are, necessarily traditional, if you will. If that's not your type of music, that's okay. But there's so many different community choirs, and songwriting, and songwriting can be just creating something out of an app. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to have lyrics. It's really your process. So that's kind of my spiel on music. I could go on forever.
Yeah. And songwriting leads into the creative writing, and so there's definitely a therapeutic process with just some people just write and write and write and write and sort of just get it all out on paper until they're exhausted. And it's all out there, and you can have a look at it, and sometimes it's not so bad once it's out on paper. Some people enjoy just journaling daily and just sort of track. This helps them to increase their self-awareness. They're just tracking how they're feeling or what went on that day. Some people like to write about their dreams and then take that and make that into a creative writing story. And then there's a whole other area of research. Again, it could be another presentation on gratitude. But you can help shift the way your brain thinks by practicing being grateful. And so some of the recommendations are to, at night, before you go to bed, to write down a few things that you're grateful for. And it can be, like the sun came out while I was waiting for the bus, and that was really nice not to be cold while I was waiting for the bus. Or it could be something, big that you're really excited about that's happened to you. The trick is to notice the little things as well as the big things and to be thankful for them, and it helps train your brain to be thankful and to be grateful, and then it shifts your thinking to be a little bit more positive and tend less to focus on the negative thoughts that sometimes can get us caught up. The other thing is poetry. One of the articles I reviewed talked about how poetry is beneficial for some people who have trouble articulating themselves and how they're feeling, because poetry is different than speaking in sentences. And so if you can use imagery or symbols or whatever, whatever way you want to use language to represent how you're feeling, it's just a different way of expressing yourself. Because that's really what the arts are. It's a way of expressing yourself without using words. And then lastly, it's dance and theater.
Yeah, so again, and referring to the handout that is being offered outside, all these things kind of are accessible. We tried to kind of touch on every kind of the four categories. So getting involved with dance classes and community theater groups. I know we've ROP and the Royal itself gets involved with propeller dance, and so there's mediums for anybody at any level, any accessibility, and it's a really neat way to find out connections to your body that maybe you didn't even know that you had or you could have. So another really great avenue for expression and getting to know yourself a little bit better,
and social connection too.
That too.
Yeah.
So here's our
they don't
vast bit of referencing.
Yeah. There's our passion. Yeah.
So we're not just all making it up. And we just want to say a big thank you, and thank you to the Client Council for having us this evening.
I think thank you, Courtney and Sara. I think they set us up really nicely, took us back and brought us back to the present and set up a nice scene for now to talk to people who live this with their art. Okay, our first panelist is Alexis. Alexis is a member of the Client Advisory Council. I'll introduce them in order, going left to right. Member of the CAC. She hasn't been here very long in the CAC, but she's embraced this role with enthusiasm, to say the least. She's engaged already in a number of activities for the Advisory Council in a very short period of time. I think of her as bubbly, but that only starts to describe Alexis. She's so positive, so upbeat, so open, always wanting to learn. And anyway, so that's Alexis. And then Richard, sitting in the middle, our second panelist, is a woodworker. He's also a founding member of what was called at the time the Client Empowerment Council. He was on that for 9.5 years and served at that time also as the chair of the council. He can be seen now all over the place, everywhere in the facility. Volunteering is his big thing. He has many tasks. He's an amazing a handyman, among many things. That's just one of them that I always notice. He can point to a number of things in this facility that he had a little hand in making work better. And he's very well known for his handcrafted wooden butterflies, which is the symbol for the Royal. And during the holiday season, you might not see him around so much, but that doesn't mean that he's not working. It's because he's incognito. That will become apparent what that means in a little bit. And then there's Glenda, also on the council. She's the vice chair of the Client Advisory Council. She's also the editor and chief of the Client's Voice newsletter. Some of you might have seen that out there. We didn't quite get it to print on time, but we managed to get a few copies done because it's on art as a wellness tool as well. So that's her coordination there, and editing is all Glenda, and trying to find people to write articles and what have you. Very good at that. She takes stories of hope from clients and brings them into the public domain. That newsletter goes all over the place, not only in the hospital. It's also a bilingual newsletter, which is fairly new to the council because it was really going far in the community and they needed it to be translated. Glenda's I always say she's like a tell it like it is kind of woman, but also has this lovely caring side and a way of working with others that she always manages to bring a bit of humor, and hopefully you'll hear her great laugh when she gets up here. So Alexis, come on up.
Hi, I'm Alexis, and I do suffer from mental illness. And when I went to my doctors referred me to the Royal. And I was very fortunate enough to get a doctor just closer to me at the Royal. And I found that when I got here, they had all these wonderful programs that they offered for people. You know, all these wellness recovery programs. So I got involved in all these wellness recovery programs, and then I ended up being a facilitator. So by being here at the Royal, I find that I'm happy here, I'm comfortable here, and they're very supportive in everything that we do here at the Royal. The slides that you're seeing that go by are just some of my photographs. That is one of my wellness tools. My first wellness tools, I started when I was very young. I started doing music. I started learning how to play the piano, then I started playing the recorder. I ended up doing private flute lessons, joined an orchestra. It was really good for me. And then I got into trouble at school. As we all get those little downfalls in life, and I hit the downfall, and I really found that by being in trouble, believe it or not, I would get grounded, which was wonderful, because then I could be at home in my own little space in my room, and I could play my flute, or I could play my recorder, and I was comfortable. I was at home, and I was safe. After I got myself back together and I got back into school, I decided that photography was another wellness tool that I really wanted to learn something about. So I started studying photography at Algonquin College, and I found out you could get free darkroom access if you kept taking the course over and over again. So I took the course over and over and over again so I could play in the darkroom. And I was very lucky because I was able to play with all my own photos. I could print them myself, and it was my way of helping with my mental illness. Anyways, I know I'm very at the end already. In closing, I just wanted to say that I believe that art and music are one of the best things for everybody. You don't have to have mental illness to enjoy it. Everybody can enjoy it. It's something that we can all share in together, and it helps people get better. I'm hoping that I am one of the proof that you can get better by using art as your wellness tools, and I'm hoping other people will jump in and try to start stuff like that. I did bring a few toys with me that I wanted to show to you, and I just brought some odd music stuff. This is a flute, and it's a really funky flute. I just bought it for myself because, you know, it was green. So that's just one of the ones I play. This is called a chanter, which some of you may know if you're Scottish and you play bagpipes. Well, this is the part that still sounds like the dead cat, but I just don't have a bag attached to it. So it still has that wonderful sound, so if you're Scottish, they are a lot of fun. I also learned that you could play some really cool stuff. So one of my new projects is I'm learning how to play a conch. And I'm only gonna make one noise, because it's kind of loud. No, hang on. So, I mean, it can go really loud. So this is just one of the fun things I like to play with. And you don't have to be good at it. You can just play. You know, that's the wonderful part. For photography, I only brought a couple of samples. And what I did is I brought my biggest camera and my smallest camera. They're both film cameras. This is a 4x5 camera. So it's kind of, people put the little tent over their head when they're standing at their tripod. People don't use them anymore, but they are really fun to use. And if you're having any problems with mental illness and that, you can take these courses at Algonquin College at night and you'll learn how to use stuff like this. And it's a lot of fun. It really is a lot of fun. This one is my smallest camera, and it's actually a spy camera from the 50s. And it does work. Except you can't buy film for it anymore. You have to cut your own film to make it work, but it's just something fun to have around. And my last toy I'm going to show you is back to music, and it's just drums. Just to show, you know what, anyone can play a drum. You can get all kinds of fancy drums. This is a boron, so if anyone is into Irish or Scottish music, this is the kind of drums you're going to see. This one is just called a tap drum. And they sell it for kids because they can all play. So that's my idea of getting well for my mental illness, and I use my photography and my music, and hopefully you enjoyed that, and it'll convince some people to get into it and get out there and try it. Try something new. You can't fail. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a psychiatric survivor, and this is my story with woodworking as a therapeutic tool to keep me well. When I look back, I was depressed at an early age, so we really need to get treatment as soon as possible for a more productive life. So you have to focus on the things that you can do, not what you can't. And you'll find, just like I did, that life is fantastic. I'm going to just scroll through these pictures a little bit. These are just some of the items that I've made for my wife, and I actually married an interior designer, so the honey-do list never stops. In 1989, the military doctors were able to diagnose me with major depressive disorder and anxiety. And while I was in the hospital, I had a few visitors, and they said, well, why don't you go for a walk? And of course, when you're depressed, you really don't want to even think about it. And then another visitor gave me a Mars chocolate bar. And my Santa bag will be going around, and if you'd like to have one, that would be great.
When do we do this now?
Right now, yeah. So they said, this will cheer you up. And I thought, well, that must be the answer. You know, why didn't I think of that? Look at all the meds that I've been on. Why didn't my doctor think of it? So, but we can work at being well.
Okay, give me 2 seconds.
All right. Everybody, heads up, have a Mars bar. If you don't get one, you'll get one after. I'll be outside selling my wares and the Mars bars will be on the table. This is a throw for all, okay? So we can work at being well, and we can do it, but a little bit at a time. And having woodworking and other hobbies has made my downtime a lot easier to grasp. Sitting and snoozing on the couch in front of the TV, feeling sorry for myself was a problem. My self-stigma to mental illness was a barrier to my recovery, but I did manage to teach my children woodworking, and that was also a win-win situation for our family. The cleaner is going to love you. But I would like to say again that we can do it, but a little bit at a time. I can see the light at the end of the depressed tunnel, and throughout my entire history with healthcare providers in Ottawa, I have been counseled by the best and the most compassionate people I've met. The staff here at the Royal really care. But mental illness is a flaw in chemistry, not a flaw in character. And I'm going to repeat that. Mental illness is a flaw in chemistry, not a flaw in character. But I still have bouts of anxiety occasionally, so I still have to be careful with the way I think and how I deal with my thoughts. Now, the next few things that actually, that painting was done by a client, and I just put the frame around it. So, having these things to stay well is like baking a cake. You need all the ingredients or it's not going to work. We can do it a little bit at a time. I have a regular sleep wake-up routine, and we also need 30 minutes of fun every day. And you need to laugh. And of course, you need to have a Mars bar. I want to tell you about smiling. A smile is something nice to see. It doesn't cost anything. A smile is something all your own, and it can never be lent to anyone. A smile is welcome anywhere. It does away with frowning. A smile is good for everyone to ease the ups and downs. And in my experience, you do need a hobby. And I tried a little bit of music, but this is about the extent of my musical talent, my toaster tongs. But we can do it a little bit at a time. And we also have to pat ourselves on the back for anything positive we do. Even if it's making toast and using my tongs, or painting your toenails, or even having a shower, or making a cutting board for the kitchen. I would also like to let you know that I've been really sick with chronic depression and anxiety, and my wife tells me I've been in the hospital 37 times since 1989. Since 2008, I've been well enough to tell my story, and giving speeches like I'm doing today gives me a boost. It's good for my self-esteem, and everybody needs that. And I hope you can learn from me that there is hope, and it is not all doom and gloom. But you must understand that we can't give up. We need to work at whatever we do. And we must try new things. And try again. With depression, it's really hard. It's a constant battle. But we can do it a little bit at a time. And my hobbies are woodworking, coin and stamp collecting, candle making, leatherworking, and everything in between. And you also need a Mars bar. Thank you.
Hello. We'll go to the first picture. So when I was a girl, I dreamed of being a ballerina and playing the piano. I really wanted to have some artistic talent. I remember staying up late at night trying to draw a horse as part of my homework and crying as I erased the page over and over at my failed attempt. And my mother kept my ugly duckling that I made in pottery class on the windowsill as a constant reminder of my lack of talent. My talents lay in mathematics, and I became an accountant. And I told everyone that I might not be artistic, but I loved the arts. I went to plays, musicals, art galleries, the ballet, concerts, and was an avid reader. I pushed both my daughters into dance and piano to live my dream. When my youngest daughter became a competitive dancer, I became a dance mom, living through her. And when she danced for a cruise ship for 6 years, I would tell everyone that would listen. Next came the severe depression and bipolar disorder for several years until I was referred to the Royal and found a wonderful doctor. Along with the doctor came other services for me to explore. I was referred to an occupational therapist who in turn referred me to many programs, one of which was an art therapy program. I certainly didn't think that I belonged there. I was a numbers girl, not an artistic girl. I loved the group. We met once a week and read poetry, played drums, painted, collaged, arranged flowers, and I believe that I learned there that art is for yourself, not necessarily for other people. Along with art therapy, I took a journaling group and soon kept a pad and a pen by my bed, writing down thoughts at bedtime. I soon began writing free verse poems to work through difficult experiences and address my struggles with living with mental illness. Poetry had given me the ability to facilitate positive perspectives on my life. I had fought my meds for many years and had finally come to a place where I knew it was best for me to take them and deal with the side effects because the alternative would never be wellness. So this is the poem that came out of that. Yourself again. It is easy as a pill to become yourself again, to enjoy the days and the people you love, to go out again and have some fun. Thank you for this gift of being me again, for I was so lost and shattered, and I am back together again. Poetry has empowered me and given me a voice. My daughter, who also lives with mental illness, and I were feeling isolated from our extended family, and I gifted her my stainless steel ring with a diamond in it. And it prompted her to write the first 2 lines of this poem. So it described our strength and hope for the future, and this poem is called Heart of Steel. I feel like I have a heart of steel with a diamond for a glimmer of hope. My heart is strong, it will not break. When times are tough, it shines a light to show me the possibilities of things yet to come. When times are sad, I feel it tighten, so I remember its strength. When times are dark, it shines a light, so I can make my way. My heart is soft and kind and loyal, but it does not make it weak. I know that I have a heart of steel with a diamond that radiates hope. Poetry has given me the ability to address problems by putting distress into words. My daughter was engaged to a singer from the States, and she met on her days working on the cruise line and dated for 5 years. She suffered from debilitating anxiety, and he flew her home and a month later broke up with her over the phone. This is the poem from this experience. The Prince. I first saw the Prince in November. He was tall, dark, and handsome, just the way he was supposed to be. Not only that, but he was talented and smart. And Patron joined us and we laughed. He was funny too. A man of her dreams, but would it happen? And she waited it out, and it did. I found out fairy tales do come true. My Cinderella had found hers. And he stayed through it all, death and sadness, pain and sorrow, crimes and fear. And then he asked us all, can I be with her for always? And I said the answer was always yes. But then in the blink of an eye, I found that fairy tales don't come true, and he is not a prince, but just a man, and there is no happily ever after. Writing poems has given me a process for dealing with my feelings and emotions and insight into traumatic experiences. My daughter, after this, battled with alcoholism during her darkest days, and the following poem fell out of this time. Empty bottle, I see you there, into my girl without a care, making her a stranger now, I want her back, you know how. Leave her alone and let her be, she needs her strength to sail the seas. She was so pretty. When she smiled, you took that away, you are so vile, I hate you, you evil beast. Your promises of happiness are empty, to say the least. Empty bottle is all that mattered, my girl is gone and my heart is shattered. Poetry has benefited me with perspective, the ability to express myself and accept myself. My family thought that I wasn't the best person to help my daughter through her hard times, so this poem appeared, Broken Pieces. She is better today. It must be time spent with her cousin, her sister, her friend. I think it is her mother. Oh no, I'm told, you are broken and cannot fix anyone, but I protest that I know best. What to do and say, people who pick up their own broken pieces are good at helping others pick up theirs. There is a lot of stigma involved with living with mental illness, and through my recovery, I lost my friends. Your television, your computer, and your phone help fill that void, but can also cause you stress. Poetry can increase your self-awareness. Facebook friend. Facebook friend, such a strange term. You are not friendly. You ignore me. No likes to my posts, no response to my messages. I am invisible. I try so desperately to reach out. I check again and again for something. I repost funny things, profound things. I write a witty status that everyone ignores. I am invisible. Picasso said, art washes from the soul the dust of everyday life. Sometimes a poem can just be fun. I lived with my mother the last 3 years of her life, and she had a grumpy cat that most of the family was very scared of. The angry old cat. The angry old cat sits on her lap as she pulls at her fur and removes the clumps that cannot be brushed out of that angry cat. The one that scares the family and steals slippers. She does not have long, but while she's still here, she rules the house. My occupational therapist also referred me to a photography group, and at the end we picked some of our favorite pictures and displayed them in the winter garden, and actually sold them. We got to write what they portrayed to us, and this one I entitled It's a Wonderful Life, and described it as walking around Dow's Lake on a snowy day, a picture that turned out black and white and brings me back to another era, expecting to see Jimmy Stewart around the corner. The next photo was named Steps to My Home, and I explained that Hintonburg is an old working class neighborhood, now a mixture of old and new. These worn steps and weeds make me imagine someone working hard all day, climbing the worn steps, wiping their boots, and entering their home to dinner with their family. The last picture is of the Lovelocks on the Somerset Street Bridge. That was my favorite experience with our photography group. I took it with Sara, by the way. My poems are love letters to myself, about myself and for myself. They help me get well, be well, and stay well. Wordsworth said, poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. It takes its origin from emotion recollected in tranquility. Thank you.